A lot of people, when they hear the term secular atheism and the Middle East, it might ring up a lot of confusion. This might be due to the fact that the majority of Middle Eastern countries are predominantly theocracies. And what is a theocracy, one might ask? A theocracy is a form of government where a particular religion has the authority over the laws and the governance of the people. And without close examination and research into a theocracy, many religious people might think that a government that revolves around religion is the only way to go. And the few remaining countries in the world that are still explicitly governed by a particular religion are mainly in the Middle East. The Middle Eastern countries in the last couple of decades have been the focal point of various conflicts and human rights abuses. But due to the geography of these countries, which have the largest oil supplies in the world, as well as the violent fanatical extremist wings of Islam, many world leaders have tiptoed around condemning these countries for their human rights violations. Most of these Middle Eastern countries are governed by the Islamic law called Sharia. And Sharia is not something that is optional in these countries. It's not like you can choose to pray 5 times a day. In Saudi Arabia, they actually have a police force called the Committee for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice, where they go around and make sure people are not doing things that are immoral, such as women not being fully covered, and the prohibition of cigarettes and alcohol, as well as any store in Saudi Arabia must close during prayer time. The religion of Islam was founded by a caravan raider by the name of Muhammad, and through his pure manipulation and brutal warfare, he was able to conquer most of the Arabian Peninsula and spread his religion. And despite Muslims holding such a high reverence for this person, when I myself look at him as a person, I see not only a disgusting human being, but one who thought a 6-year-old by the name of Aisha would make himself a good wife. The pedophilia of this prophet manifests today in these countries. For example, a 40-year-old man in Yemen married an 8-year-old girl, and after the wedding, she died from internal bleeding 4 days later. This pedophile was not arrested, and justice for this murdered 8-year-old girl is unlikely. And this is not uncommon in Yemen, where 1 out of every 3 females is married before they turn 18, and a large percentage of these child marriages happen before the girl hits puberty. And the Prophet Muhammad was also a misogynist who had multiple wives and is quoted on saying, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man?" And this is what a woman was asking him. And he said, "Yes. This is because the deficiency of a woman's mind." This is in the Hadith, Volume 3, Book 48, number 826. Also in the verse Bukhari 72:715. I don't know if I pronounced the word right, but a woman came to Muhammad and begged her to stop her husband from beating her. Her skin was so bruised so badly, as she described as being greener than the green veil she was wearing, and Muhammad did not admonish her husband, but instead he ordered her to return to him and submit to his sexual desires. And in the chapter Surah, which is S-U-R-A, chapter 4, verse 34, also continuing with this extreme level of misogyny, men have the authority over women because God has made one superior to the other. And because they spend their wealth to maintain them, good women are obedient. They guard their unseen parts because God has guarded them. As for those from whom you fear disobedience, admonish them and forsake them in beds apart and beat them. Another major issue in these countries is sexual repression, where women are forced to cover themselves in the name of modesty. But wearing a garment that fully covers a person's body where they are indistinguishable is extreme, not modest. And making it so men have to walk around all day and all the women are covered up leads to aggression. In Iran, a woman was running for city council and the religious clerics forced the billboards of her to be taken down and for her to forfeit the election. And you might ask, why did that happen? And the reason for this was because the billboards of her were seen as too promiscuous by the religious zealots in that country. And this is a billboard as an example. In Saudi Arabia, women are unable to drive and need written permission from their husband or a male relative in order to travel. Women in these countries are treated less than animals, where women can be flogged for refusing to wear suffocating full body garments such as the hijab or chador. Also, there has been cases where women have been raped and the woman is arrested and whipped for the crime of adultery. This is due to the Quran saying woman needs 4 male witnesses to prove that she was raped. Now, after hearing all these gross injustices in these theocratic countries, one might ask, how do you solve these issues? And secularism is how you solve it. And what does the word secular mean? Secular is basically a state of being or an entity that is separate from a religion, such as the government. A religion has no bearing on how the government functions. And atheism, which is a person who has a lack of religious beliefs, and atheists do exist in the Middle East, but if they were to come out and say that they were atheists, they would face severe consequences. This is due to the Quran having such brutal, vile verses towards people who do not give in to that certain religion. And these verses for atheists in the Quran are, "O you who believe, fight those of the unbelievers who are near to you." And in another verse it says, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay tax in acknowledgement of superiority and they are in a state of subjection with willing submission and feel themselves being subdued." So this religion in its book tells its followers that pretty much conquering other people and making them live under their certain religion is acceptable and is what you should do. Now, I on one hand think everyone should be able to believe in what they want to believe. But Islam, like any other religion, is a system of brainwashing where it influences people on a day-to-day basis. It gives justification for people to terrorize others who don't want to be a part of it. And when your country revolves around strict adherence to a religion where a person 5 times a day comes on a loudspeaker and leads a city in prayer, it's hard for one to speak out. And despite atheists in these countries unable to say they're atheists, they're still there. And the reason I made this video is for my fellow human beings living under these code of laws where things that we take for granted, such as the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, and the freedom to think and exchange ideas, is strictly forbidden. Theocratic governments and religious hierarchy are the prime example to why secularism is a key foundation to human rights when it comes to government. I made this video to give voice to the millions upon millions of closeted atheists in Middle Eastern countries who on a day-to-day basis have to put up with a religion that they know in the back of their heads they do not believe in, and it's irrational and it makes no sense whatsoever. Every country has problems, but for the most part these problems are fixable through reasoning and logical approaches. But when your government is based off religion, problems tend to be dealt with by irrational religious thinkers. A country which could solve very simple problems are unable to, due to the fact that a religious clergy or a religious institution is in essence in control of their government. If these countries became secularized, where they can still worship who they choose to worship or choose not to, it would reduce or possibly eliminate many of these human rights abuses. The government would be based off logic and critical thinking, where the legal age of marriage is 18, where pedophiles are no longer able to marry children who still play with dolls and haven't even started their menstrual cycle. Women and men would be equal in every aspect, and if a woman or a man chooses to wear a hijab or any kind of other religious garment, then that's their choice. Men who rape women are to be thrown in jail, not the other way around. Equal rights for all is not something that is debatable. It is a standard that we as human beings should adhere to. And that's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, and have a nice day.